this year predictions, you will see that some of it is applicable to the changes, because we didn't know. We did these predictions in the summer, almost a year ago, and there was no way that we can predict what is going to happen. I'll also go a little bit deeper in one specific predictions of artificial intelligence, machine learning applied to cybersecurity. I'll tell you a little bit about rebuttal. There's always people who don't believe in what you do. So this gentleman, Jeff Wass, editor-in-chief of IEEE Computer, gave us rebuttal on our predictions. You'll see who made predictions. And then the bulk of this talk is really about technology predictions for times of pandemics. I'd like to start with the fact that it goes two ways. So technology helps with pandemics, but pandemics also forced us to accelerate some of the technologies. For example, we have been giving so many webinars, podcasts using Zoom, WebEx, and others. It was possible to do before, but it was never exercised as much as nowadays. We all ramped up our connections, fixed our last line, and then I can go on and on with other technologies that are really ramped up in order to address pandemics. For each of 10 technology predictions that I have made, I will go in details about the problems, opportunities, impact, and then about sustainable solution and business opportunity, because it can't happen only 1 year. If you really want these to stick, you need to make sustainable solution. And then I'll close with some general observations. So someone said that predictions are really hard, especially if you do them in the future. Other than that, there's a lot of degrees of uncertainty, and many times it's guessing and luck. In many cases, it's not only about technology, because almost always you can develop technology. Rarely do you fail. What is commonly happening is that technology is not adopted broadly. In many cases, it's not the best technology that is adopted, but it's a combination of business, luck, business acumen of those people who drive it, etc. In many ways, it is distinguishing a fashion from a true trend that help us do the prediction. There's a lot of technology, I don't want to mention them, but that are just fashionable. People talk about them, but there's no technical background. We also did reports, we did blogs, interviews, so we got a lot out of these predictions. We almost think about it as a different kind of publication. It's short, one paragraph prediction, but there's a lot of thought that comes into that paragraph. But there was a lot of press releases that were made out of that, and we got a lot of visibility out of it. Now, I don't want to go over these specific scorecards that we made from 2016 through 2019. It's just to give you some example of what kind of predictions we made and what kind of successes or failures we did. What I'd like to point out, successes-wise, that we, for example, and it's really relevant to this society, computational intelligence, I think we very correctly already 2015 predicted advanced machine learning, accelerators, and cognitive computing, then deep learning and deep learning accelerators. So pretty successful in this thread of AI. And the same is true for virtual reality, assisted reality. But we weren't always good in predictions. So we predicted non-volatile memory, and it didn't get adopted at the time we predicted. The same is true for capability-based security and a lot of security threats. And again, it's not that these technologies weren't possible, it's just that they weren't adopted that year because there wasn't a need, or business wasn't there, or whatever. And there are interesting situations where we were pretty happy with predicting blockchain, but the following year digital currencies, which we predicted, didn't take off. So as you can see, it's a luck. Here are 12 technology predictions we made for this year. As I said, we did them a year ago. AI at edge, non-volatile memory products, you can see we didn't give up on it. Digital twins, AI and critical systems, practical delivery drones, additive manufacturing. And I can give you examples for each one of those, how they affected even the times of pandemics. AI at edge is ability to do analysis at the point where you are doing examination of patients. Digital twins enable us to do simulation in real time, how people are moving. AI and critical systems are related to both factories, but also hospitals. Practical delivery drones were used in delivering some of the medicine supplies to the places where it wasn't possible to do. Additive manufacturing was used for printing these visors and some of the other equipment. And these three papers, these three predictions went into more detailed papers that appeared in IEEE Computer December issue. And here are remaining 6. Cognitive skills for robots, AI machine learning applied to cybersecurity, legal related implications to reflect security and privacy, adversarial machine learning, reliability and safety challenges for intelligent systems. As you can see, many of these are related to your own society. And similarly to previous, there's a lot of aspects like legal implications to privacy and security that have been discussed extensively at the times of pandemics and many others. And these 3, you can find the papers in IEEE Computer, which go in much more detail. And I like to spend just a little bit more on this point number 8, which I can claim also is important nowadays, because a lot of rogue elements are trying to take advantage of pandemics and attack either hospitals or government agencies or businesses. And if we can use AI machine learning to help cyber analysts make better decisions, we would advance the cybersecurity dramatically. What we wanted to accomplish here, and we're doing an effort now with IEEE, sponsored by IEEE USA and Standards Association, to run a grand challenge where we'll invite people around the world to come and fight each other. Some will play defense, other offense, and we will automate monitoring of their strategies. And then using standardized ways, we will capture their strategies and use it to train AI, so that AI can in the future help with cyber defense. Here's rebuttal by Jeff Voss. What he thought is that these aren't really predictions in his opinion, these are more of evolving trends, and that is true, I must accept, because if you're making prediction within a year, it's really hard to have the groundbreaking change every year. He was also questioning whether they are fit for purpose versus ripe for exploitation and destructive behavior of some of the technologies. And he concludes that, you know, technology is like a coin, it has a head and a tail. So any technologies can be used for good purposes, but it can be leveraged by adversarial people. And this reminds me of ludicists movement for, you know, many centuries ago, when people were afraid of new technologies, the machines, that they will take over humans. And that's true for any technology, because any technology can be misused. In order to put things in perspective, I created this simple diagram which classifies technologies in terms of impact that they can make, likelihood, and then color indicates the prediction confidence that we have had. As you can see, I believe that AI at edge, which is already being adopted, adversarial machine learning, and safe structures are something that are both predicted with high confidence, could have a large impact, and higher likelihood of happening, in our opinion. And then they're followed by a few other AI techniques, AI cyber, digital twins. We probably felt that the least chance for success has quantum computing, even though it will have the huge impact. And the reason is that it's just too short distance, 1 year for something to be adopted. It's more like 5, 10, sometimes even 20 years that these technologies can evolve to happen. And I already spoke a little bit of the relevance of these technologies in the light of COVID, so I won't repeat this. You can see this in the either in the slides, or you can view the podcast and read it in detail. Here are the people that made these predictions. We work together. It's about 2, 4, 10 of us, including DIC. I think it's 12, and then the staff who helped us, and the gentleman who made rebuttal. These are technologist leaders around the world. One of them, Roberto Saraco, as a part of IEEE Future Directions Committee, which cuts across all societies, made analysis of some of the technology predictions and technologies enablers that will help them take place. These exclude some of the already running activities within Future Directions Committee, such as Future of the Networking and a few others. But you can see some of them, like connecting genotype to phenotype, balancing privacy versus societal needs, precision agriculture. All of them are really important and are really critical smart materials for the times of COVID. And again, I don't have time to go through them, but it's interesting to go deeper, and there's even extensive blog that discusses them. The link is at the bottom of the page. If you didn't catch it, just email me and I forward it to you. So why did I do this? Why technology predictions for times of pandemics? The primary reason is that pandemics has created substantial stress on the humankind existence, literally, on all of us, on our values and daily lives. And that deals with privacy versus societal benefits. You know, we're all closed. I mean, I'm doing this podcast out of my bedroom. Here's my bed. This is where I spend most of my time. Monday through Sunday, there's no difference anymore. A colleague of mine said that in the past weekend were the days when you don't go to office. Now my office is here every day. There's global work organization. That's true not just for me, but other than people who really have to go to offices because they need to do work on some hardware or some other infrastructure where the presence in office is required. Most people work from home, and everyone is now rethinking how to do that, whether people have quality chairs, quality network, do they have all the computers that they need, etc. Then there's supply chain logistics, and I'll go into more detail there. As I was saying earlier, pandemics did accelerate digital transformation because it simply required us to all focus on remote presence or working digitally. People are doing Philharmonia remotely, ballet remotely, and many other unforeseeable things from the past. So technology is increasingly playing a crucial role in all of this. It is really becoming essential for our survival. If you think about computers being turned off in medicine, hospitals, that will be detrimental. So without that technology, we wouldn't be succeeding. The situation will be gruesome. And predicting technologies will help addressing pandemics as well. It goes well beyond just hypothetical exercise. Philosophical exercise that we do. So, for example, high performance computing in vaccine discovery and deciding when it will take place. Is it going to happen in 6 months, in a year, in 2 years? Makes a huge difference in the economies around the world. Should we close everything? Some countries did it, others didn't. And there are many dependencies there. So you really need to do a careful simulation of it. Then simulating virus spread, there were some AIs that were running virus spread in stores, who wears mask, who doesn't. Then there's privacy versus IP sharing. So you can think about, for the first time in the long history, that two competitors like Apple and Google decided to share information so that their phones can collaborate in sharing information about who is potentially infected, who is not, and etc. And there are many more examples, some of which I'll discuss. So to cut, I apologize for this lack of animation on the right. I added this box in the last moment. So anyways, here are 10 technologies that I think are really important at the times of pandemics. And I prioritize them in the decreasing order. And some of my choices may surprise you, but I'll try to justify them. And you will likely have different opinions. So I listed high performance computing first, and I'll explain why. Genomics analytics second, tracking and surveillance third, medicine fourth, supply chain elasticity, food production and delivery, remote presence, connectivity, specifically 5G, behavioral sciences, and sharing IP. And being an engineer, we like to do these, play with these architectural diagrams. So, you think in diagrams, in these boxes. You can arrange them in some of the core technologies that enable applied technologies running on top of them, different industry verticals, and then some of the legal social aspects. And you can rearrange this diagram in many other ways. So for example, tracking surveillance has tons of legal, social implications. You can think about remote presence also as industry vertical, medicine as applied technology, et cetera, et cetera. And the same is true for supply chain. But that's the option I chose. And as you will see, especially when I discuss inhibitors and enablers, it will mean quite a bit. So let's go one after another. So first, high performance computing. And this might be most peculiar to people. So why did I put it first? Well, the problems are that, as you can see today, there's substantial need for broad set of simulations. Genomics analytics, virus spread, people movement, supply chain, many other basic and applied sciences. And that all depends on this simulation, how you execute them. And it's not just whether you'll execute them, but how quickly can you execute them, because human lives depend on them. If you can't do it very quickly, you may be missing on the opportunity to save people. And even the largest computer nowadays, with exascale looming around the corner, they have limited capacity. New solutions are required for chemistry, material sciences, biology, etc. And then there's end of Moore's law, which means that old speeds, feeds are kept. And only new technologies will enable. And if we really want to do simulations at the world scale or smaller scale, but with more complex interactions, we really need more advanced high performance computing. There's a lot of opportunities, so it's not that catastrophic with the end of Moore's law. There's opportunity with AI for science, again, relations to your own society, because people in the United States, but elsewhere around the world, in Asia and Pacific and in Europe, they realize because you cannot scale anymore and you need to do not just traditional high performance computing, but you need to do some of the data sciences in AI, you really need to start using deep neural networks, which means that you can start using accelerators, which are new on the market, and they can scale these algorithms beyond traditional limits imposed by the end of Moore's law. There's also in situ analytics at the edge. This means that you can't just follow the model where you put everything in the cloud and then collect information from the edge from the patients. You can do a lot of pre-processing where the patient is. And you can do a lot of analytics there. And then that in situ analytics combined with Internet of Things devices can help quite a bit in terms of scaling. And then there are new types of computing. People have developed memories for computing, even photonics for computing. We'll see which of these materialize. The impact of high performance computing, as I mentioned, is on shorter time to solution. For example, COVID vaccine, again, deeply connected to the human lives. Increased confidence in prediction, better tied to government policies. When will you open up or close the curfews, whether you will allow certain areas where people can go without masks, or you will require masks to be worn everywhere. And then ability to make global coordination, because you have seen that it started in China and then it migrated independently to both Europe and USA. That wasn't true with birds flu 10 years ago. It was largely contained within Asia. But now, with increased people's movement, there's also a requirement for global coordination and sharing the information, which is really critical, but also using that information to do predictions. How can we make all of this sustainable? How can we make a business opportunity out of this so that even when pandemics goes away, we can still leverage this? Well, there's this global competition on post-exascale. There are centers in China, in Japan, in Germany, and other places in Europe and US. And, they are both competing and sharing, but they're more competing. So unless we can advance these technologies where there's more sharing, I don't think that the advancement will be as good. Advances in AI, machine learning, and deep learning are imminent, especially the new hardware accelerators. Just recently, we've seen huge chips built with huge power consumption, which are completely breaking the ground and enabling interesting tie-ins, because a lot of scaling was done using scale out, but now we can even add these accelerators to scale up machine with large memories, which will enable graphs, which directly map on the behaviors of virus spread. Then there's delivery of low to mid-range high-performance computing as a service in the cloud. This wasn't possible in the past. There's a lot of consolidation. Some of it happened in my company. We acquired SGI and Cray, but elsewhere it's happening as well. So what are enablers? It's kind of a conclusion of what I said, but new types of accelerators and silicon photonics will enable scaling, which is really critical. Inhibitors are end of Moore's law and then obsolete programming models. We're still programming using MPI and multi-threading, and that just doesn't work for deep neural networks. So I spent probably the most time on this one, so I'll speed up a little bit. Genomics analytics, it's not only about gene sequencing, which was really critical to understanding how the virus is mutated from China, and ability to recognize how these mutations went from China to Europe to US, and we're seeing now some of the European mutated viruses coming back to China. And that's really critical to understand what is the path and how to do cures, how to understand whether we're becoming resistant, whether to take plasma out of cured people, etc. But it does require a high degree of private data and robust anonymization techniques, which will tie into one of the later techniques. Opportunities are large in interdisciplinary application of AI, machine learning, and deep learning techniques to genomics, because again, you can't only do it using high performance traditional computing, you need to use other techniques, which Alexandra is probably well aware in terms of data science, how to find outliers. And they're all applied to plasma therapy with immediate help to patients, eventually to customize vaccines, so not just one vaccine, but ability to have a patient come to you, you take information from him on the spot using edge devices and customize vaccine on the spot to have it really most powerful for that patient rather than general that, will have variations how to treat. And then a number of prevention techniques. Impact, I think, is unnecessary to discuss. It's a global health improvement and pandemic prevention, but I think it also has a much longer impact on reduced cost of healthcare. And that's really critical because, I think this is just the tip of the iceberg. There are probably more viruses and other things we weren't prepared as a humankind. So we just need to be ready next time. In terms of sustainable solution and business opportunity, it's discussed in this document that I listed, but ultimately demand growth will drive the cost down, and hopefully it will broaden the use cases. I sincerely hope that whoever discovers vaccine first will not go after becoming rich, but after helping others first. And then hopefully we can expand the use to other areas such as regulatory genomics. Enablers are new types of accelerators, again important, high performance computing, machine learning. And then inhibitors is, demand is still outperforming supply. So sometimes it's good, other times it's not, because I think we're running circles a little bit. And then customized analytics is really far away from consumer adoption, but hopefully it will happen. Tracking and surveillance I put as a third one, and you can probably understand why I did it. At this time of pandemics, it's really critical to limit the spread, and that's why tracking and surveillance is really critical. Problems and demand are, you can understand that economies are really suffering, and some businesses are completely going out of business, like restaurants, hotels, airfares, etc. It's really hard decision to decide what to close, what not. Um, and in many cases, it impacts daily life of people because they cannot simply, feed their families if they can't work, and because everything is closed. For engineers, it's easy. I work from home. I continue to do, but those people who are, put out of work either on unlimited or limited time, it's pick up your poison. Are you going to get infected, or you're going to die out of lack of food? Um, but also it conflicts with the freedom and opens up opportunity for violation, misuse by governments, corporations, and various adversaries. Luckily, there are a lot of opportunities for using homomorphic techniques to preserve anonymity. So classical example is if you have the X-ray images and you don't want to disclose either the patient or even the geography or anything, you can use homomorphic techniques to go and do some of the data science analysis, do some conclusion, do some deep learning out of comparing independent images in different areas, and then come to some conclusion. And that can help in eliminating the need for individual consent and avoiding any substantial violations. And I'm aware of many research teams that are pursuing this. It also helps devise global policies, sign international treaties that will prevent misuse. And I cannot overemphasize how important that is, this global cooperation. It's also true for tracking food, animals, devices. So there's a broader opportunity. Impact is that we can quickly identify sources of carriers, focus zones, and then close up these zones and open up the rest of the world. So it's really the best of both worlds. It can help other viruses and diseases such as common flu. There's a lot of people that die out of common flu every year. And then combined with genomics analytics, it will help in choosing right treatments. In terms of sustainable solutions and business opportunity, I think identifying commercial use cases where tracking technology could be really beneficial. And that's anonymized customer purchase patterns when you enter the store. Where do you go first? That was possible in the past, but you can take it even to the next level by combining across all the stores and doing deep learning across tons of the data, and combined with collecting only required information at the edge. Then border crossing in support of both crime prevention and also spread of virus, and origins of parts and counterfeiting. That has always been an important problem. Enablers are genomics analytics, inhibitors are governance and regulatory compliance. As you can see, regulatory compliance and governance is usually the toughest thing. It's easiest to develop technologies by adoption, but it is for good reason, because if you start adopting some technologies very quickly, you can be exposed to misuse or even wrong use. So there's a reason why regulatory compliance lags in times. Medicine may seem obvious, and you probably are asking, why didn't I think of it, and why didn't I put it even before? The problems in medicine are lack of equipment. Initially, nobody had masks, respirators, tests, and infrastructure too. Initially, not everyone was entirely sure of the protocols, so they were adapting them in terms of treatment, symptoms, how you put, your gear, how you take it off, how work people in pairs so that everyone is watching the other after, spending whole day as a nurse or doctor in hospital. You're just tired, want to go to bed, and it's easy to skip things. And medicine helps with that. So it's also the workflows or processes you do. There's lack of personnel to treat COVID patients as well, and other patients, because if doctors are busy with COVID, there are many other patients who are in need of support. In terms of opportunities, using HPCI to derive more conclusive processes is always helpful. Relying on genomics analytics to derive proper treatment. You can already see the patterns using 3D printers, additive manufacturing to produce equipment. In terms of impact, humankind needs to become immune to these viruses. I don't think we have any other way around. So unless medicine helps us with that, it's going to be a tough life for everyone. We also need to be more resilient. We need global and affordable healthcare. I'm not sure about Australia and other parts of the world. In US, it's still very expensive and not always efficient and effective. We also need global knowledge bases and platforms for sharing IP that these doctors are gathering. So it shouldn't be just, opportunistic. It needs to be organized. In terms of sustainable solutions, I already mentioned deriving general processes, procedures is really important, improvements to healthcare in daily use, and then broader adoption of IT in healthcare. It's already used, but we need to do it even more. Enablers are AI at genomics analytics, tracking surveillance. Inhibitors, I already mentioned a few times, non-shared IP, and supply chains. And let me talk a little bit more about supply chain. Supply chains may seem extremely boring topic. I never liked it in my lifetime, but it's really critical. It's really critical. I like this quote by Robert Collier, who said, "Supply always comes on the heels of demand." And you have seen that at the time of closeout of countries such as China, many corporations that depended on their products simply went south. No parts, you can't ship products, and there are problems. A lot of supplies, like even masks, were produced in China, so there was a lack in the rest of the world. A lot of industry verticals closeout resulted in surplus of products, which is opposite now. So you have a lot of oil that wasn't consumed due to travel reduction, then issues with agricultural products due to restaurant, hotels close out. So we have these two contrarian behaviors. And this is all due to this extreme lack of elasticity of supply chain. Supply chain was always made elastic because you never know how supply and chain will interact. So there was always some buffers, but this is extreme. You completely cut down all hotels, you close most of them, there's no travel. So where are you gonna spend this oil? It becomes very costly to use it. What do you do with milks that cow produce? You can't even make all cheese out of it because no one is consuming it. So how do you redirect this? Can you make a global market there? So there's a lot of inertia to start and stop markets rather than fluctuate elastically, and there's a dramatic need to work on this. Nevertheless, opportunities are also huge. Redesigning supply chains from ground up for this extreme elasticity, apply risk mitigation and disaster recovery techniques by making those supply chains global, making sure that you can leverage what is produced here to ship to other places. Find ways to sustain longer stoppages without compromising workforce. Now, it's easier said than done. Some geographies that produce various products only in the spring or summer, you can't change that. In California, it's easier because the summer, spring, fall, you can produce them anytime, and all kinds of other parts of the world have different climate. Impact is, we really need these more robust supply chains, reduce costs, more flexibility in bidding to different suppliers and providers. So these are all benefits that we can have. In terms of sustainable solution and business opportunity, we can make industry stronger and we can democratize marketplaces, resulting in much more robust production. And while elasticity was always in the mind, global extreme closeouts were not predicted. So that has to change. So enablers are global and flexible markets, AI at edge to collect information, and inhibitor is obviously lack of predictability. Food production is very similar to supply chain management, and it follows. So I won't go into too many details here. I'll speed up things. I would just point out that delivery is critical here because in certain cases, you cannot deliver because you have to, for example, go to the elderly home where everyone is infected. You have to deliver, and how do you do that? And how do you charge when you go to farmer's market? In any store, you need to buy food, you need to get it. So it's not just these drones that do, I mean, it's too early for them, but there's a lot of on-demand like Instacart and other businesses that started. Again, demand resulted in those. Home delivery by major producers, Amazon, Walmart, etc. Remote presence, we are living it now because I'm giving you this podcast. And in many ways, it also enabled much broader attendance. I'm giving this for the fourth time, the same talk to different regions of the world. I would normally do that only physically, face-to-face at some parts, but this is really, I think, enabled quite a bit. It's not just Zoom. People are using Skype, WebEx, and many others. Just one point, I'm not sure if you're following my eye contact. I have to read here. It would be much easier if the camera would be all around my screen, and if, wherever I look, if that camera will recognize that I'm looking there and will take over. So these small things will be, again, driving technology advancement in terms of ease of use, convenience, etc. Connectivity in 5G has been spoken quite a bit, and I won't go in details. I think that telemedicine, gaming, industry automation, 3D video, and augmented reality are some of the enables. And then inhibitors, they're still not the true killer applications. These are all believable areas, but we still need some real specific gaming application, or perhaps remote surgery that will make a huge difference. Behavioral sciences are probably popular because of Cambridge Analytica, and believe that they forged the elections and helped Trump. I don't go into politics here, but there's a lot of other misuses, and there's a lot of misinformation, conspiracy theories, but behavioral sciences are here to stay, and they can help quite a bit in corporate organizational behavior, consumer behavior, media research, etc. Again, for good reason, regulatory compliance and auditing are some of the inhibitors, and I think it's not necessarily a bad case. Sharing IP, intellectual property, I touched on it a number of times. The impact is really on human lives, economies, and quality for the rest of the world. The more we can share, I understand that it's competitive nature. I mean, I'm patenting. My company keeps these patents to protect themselves, but we open up all our patents for public use if it helps against COVID, and so have many other companies. So we need to understand when it's the right thing to drive protection on intellectual property and when to open it up. Enablers are substantial pressure, human rights organization, and inhibitors are this competitive advantage. And again, I put these 10 technologies here. I truly believe that HPC and remote presence will advance with highest impact and likelihood, and my confidence in them is pretty high. Medicine connectivity follow, genomics analytics and behavioral sciences follow. I put sharing IP as the one which will have extremely high impact, but low to medium likelihood, because people, unfortunately, are quite selfish still. I hope it will change. I honestly hope it will change, but we'll need to drive that behavior with positive examples. Tracking surveillance for the same reason, and also because a lot of people are concerned about this. Supply chain elasticity, I think, is also very, very hard, but hopefully it will happen. And food production delivery, I think, is much ahead of it. So some general observations before I conclude. As you have seen, some of the industries are severely impacted by pandemics, dramatically reducing demand, and technology cannot help them substantially. They can help them, but they can not reverse the lack of demand. Transportation, cruises, taxis, Lyft, Uber, hotels, really hard. Same is true for oil and gas. In general, accommodation industry, they are almost wiped. They'll need a long, long time to recover if they can. At the same time, some of the technologies and approaches are applicable across many fields. Your area, from computational intelligence, AI, machine learning, deep learning techniques, they can be applied across all other technologies. Cybersecurity is always essential, and it's even more essential now. digital transformation is taking place in an accelerated way. And then disaster recovery, especially of manufacturing and supply chain, which is very similar to data centers, really need to take place if we want to be resisting to the future. So in overall summary, I think pandemics is showed to us that technology is critical at times of pandemics, but the opposite is also true. Pandemics helps aggressive technology evolution. Necessity is mother of invention. There are also some general observation that technology predictions or trends were always popular, but now it's not just popularity, they're becoming increasingly useful because we do require to make predictions for various aspects of our life and economies, etc. We, as our little team that did these predictions, continue to experiment with approaches and delivery models. We're becoming, I think, more systematic and rigorous in our predictions. We'll start using Google Trends we used in the past, IEEE Explore, ACM Digital Library, etc. We're always seeking feedback. I can tell you that I presented similar thing to the Consumer Electronics chat, and they gave me a lot of interesting feedback. I'm looking forward to your feedback, which will be from different kind, but I'm sure it will be very useful. And feel free to approach me or my colleagues. We're always looking for feedback. I also want to point out that there'll be another special issue on technology predictions in IEEE Computer in July 2021 with the paper submission date on December 1st, 2020. So you still have about 5 months till then. And here are the topics. So I want to thank you for your patience, and you can reach me at these social media and other connections.
Thank you, Dejan, for your presentation and really offering a sneak peek into future and technology of the future. Now is the time to ask the questions in chat. And while you're typing, I have a few questions myself. Yep. So regarding the tracking and being on the scale of having high potential, but probably low adoption because of the challenges we need to solve prior to that, like global sharing. How do you think we can solve this issue? Do you think IEEE can play a role in this, and maybe define some global standards around information sharing, or can blockchain help solve this issue?
I think so, and I think it could be a combination of edge and global. So one interesting technology that I was aware in the past, it was mentioned in the previous presentation, Q&A, was use of the global cameras, because as you know, Google is taking pictures of everything, so they can track some of the movement at the lower scale with the lower resolution. But that's the global way how you can observe things. And the other is simply phones. You know, everyone's carrying this phone, but people are very resisting to use them because they don't trust. So if we can use the standards that specify what kind of information can be shared and how it could be anonymized, then we can have the confidence in letting this information go and maintaining your private information for yourself. And I think that IEEE can help quite a bit there. We are, by the way, as I mentioned, for AI machine learning applied to cybersecurity, tomorrow morning I'm having the meeting with Standards Association people to discuss how we can start informally as an industry connection first, working with them for labeling information coming from these grand challenges. So I can imagine that we can label information that is coming from phones, where only specifically labeled information will be allowed to be shared. These are just a couple of examples. Well, that's an excellent question. Thank you.
Right. Isn't it interesting how people are willing to share their life on Facebook, but when it comes to sharing their information that can help globally. They are very protective of it. But
Exactly.
anyways,
Mind blowing.
yeah. What about reskilling? Like with technology changing, evolving so fast, and jobs changing so fast, how can we keep up with this change and make sure that um, we reskill, retrain people so that their roles don't become redundant, but they evolve into different roles instead?
Absolutely. I think it's the essence of Charles Darwin theory. Either you change or you disappear, and that's true even without pandemic. So in my company, we're delivering all our products now as a service. So that's priority. If I don't focus on that, um, it is not as efficient, as effective as I do. But here, the pandemic's closed many doors, as I mentioned, for the airlines. A lot of stewardesses, pilots, they couldn't work. The same is true for some lower skills jobs where people are working in some specific areas, like in agriculture, where they had to stop production. But at the same time, some of the stores that are doing really well, or Amazon that is selling online, or Instacart, or Walmart, they're opening a number of new jobs. Now, I don't think at the moment that closeout is proportional to the opening, or vice versa. There are many more closeouts than opening. Uh, but it's simply the fit of those who can change. That's the directly proportional to survival. Um, Also, I think we need to, for the global survival, we need to focus on the problems at hand. That's helping the whole of humanity. So there are these two global needs for skilling, like medicine. Do you really focus on treating the um, certain rashes that you have, or you focus on those people who have the viruses, and there are many other examples. So it's absolutely essential to reskill. It's in a way the same thing as supply chain management, where supply is really human workers. So
Are
it's
there
another.
enough tools available out there for reskilling? Because universities are sometimes slow to change their curriculum, but there are a lot of online resources. Do you think
Yeah,
that it's enough?
I think so. I am working with a lot of professors, and I am amazed how quickly all of them converted everything to online, and how quickly they change, because their living is dependent on it as well, and they're making careful decisions. So they are changing how they teach. They are. My daughter is going to East Coast to for her PhD, and her professor split the large class in two, so she'll have to teach twice.
Mm.
But that is directly proportional to pandemics. Should anyone get virus, you are mitigating the risk of spread by splitting it too. And there are many other examples. So um, I am guessing that a lot of online courses that existed will help reskilling people. There are other also professional organizations that are helping with project management, for example, and many other things. And then it's easy nowadays, relatively easy, to record podcasts on how to do this or that. I've been doing a lot of production of these videos, and I don't even go to manuals anymore, because it's quicker to just type in the problem and you get it. My bicycle lock got stuck, and I'm searching online. So
Mm.
anything you need, you search online. But it's for those people who do that, because a lot of people still don't. So it's the survival of fittest.
We have a few questions from audience, from Matt. What do you think the next step towards democratizing marketplace to make our supply chains more elastic will be in our immediate future?
Well, I think it will have to be done on a vertical by vertical. So you can already see, for example, that in store, when you are buying things, there was lack of certain products, and then they were ramping it up. So you will have to reprioritize what you do. And that is also true for every company. If you are losing business, you'll have to focus on the winning products and you'll have to drop the others. So I think the first step in supply chain management is for every company that produces anything to focus on what is a must. Obviously, governments have different interests. That is to protect their people so that they can probably subsidize things that aren't purely market driven. But that's my take on it, that all verticals will have to focus on their priorities and then try to deliver and mitigate the risk. The other thing is, you've seen, for example, especially those companies that depended on products in China, they started moving elsewhere. So some are bringing back in US, others are diversifying, building something in producing something in Europe and in other parts of the world. So that's the second step, diversification or production. And then only the third thing would be to start to think how you can stop production, how you can make the contracts with supplies, because it's really input versus output. And if input stops, output will stop. So you need to work with both your supplier and your customers how to build these contracts, sign these new contracts, so that you can regulate what happens if they don't deliver, and how can you get deliveries from someone else.
Thank you. Next question is, how much will the role of trusted devices in edge computing and IoT enable a trusted source of truth of data that AI will rely in the future? How far away are we from deriving AI outcomes from trusted IoT data in the real world?
Okay, so there are, I think, two things. One thing is how to make these devices secure. And I think there's a lot of work on it. I mean, I was just reviewing a few papers today from a conference on how they're making trusted devices. And you start from a trusted platform, and then you build up the root of trust all the way up. And these phones, they are, in other edge devices, they are really small computers which have running Linux and can have SoCs and memories and other things. So we can make them secure. It's the choice whether we will possibly not make them because it's more costly, but you can make them if you need. Now, the issue with AI and deep learning is different kind of aspects, and that is whether there is bias, whether you can trust that the algorithm is not biased in certain direction that you haven't thought of, either on purpose or by accident. And there's a lot of need to understand transparency and how you develop these algorithms, how they work, and that's completely different area. And then as these AIs become more self-sufficient, the question is, can you trust them that humans will be in the loop when you need to be? And that's completely different aspect than the truly core basic security. And a lot of people are working in this area because it's only taking up now. I mean, if you go all the way back to Stanley Kubrick's Odyssey 2000, there was the HAL computer that didn't want to give up control to the astronauts. And the same thing can happen here, because you're putting some algorithms, you're running some face recognition, for example, and you don't know whether it was biased for women, men, different color of the people, different size, different faces, whatever. So these are different kinds of security aspects that we are, I believe, much further away. The core security, I think we're close. It's hard. Security is always hard. I think we're closer to solving it. AI security, much further away.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. And last question. I'm wondering, what are your thoughts on future of AI during and post pandemics in more conservative industries such as oil, gas, and mining?
I'm not sure that they are more conservative. They are also using high performance computing, and just like any other high performance computing users, they'll start using um, various accelerators to do analysis where it's cheapest to drill the rigs, oil rigs, because it's directly proportional to money. And they are getting tons of information. I remember we had one customer more than 10 years ago, which were putting sensors in the desert in order to get information how the earth moves, and in order to make decision how to drill. This is typical case of AI at the edge, where you collect information, filter it out, and then occasionally you collect all this information and do deep learning in the back end. So I don't think that they might be conservative in how they act outside, but I think they're extremely technologically advanced, and they're using things. So I'm not worried about them in post pandemics. We just need to get there when oil is again used. And I think this is one of the most important verticals that is driving a lot of technology. I have tremendous respect for that.
Mm. Thank you. Thank you very much for your time, Dejan, and for the presentation. Queensland section is really honored to have you as a presenter. So if any of you have any more questions, please reach out to Dejan on Facebook or email. And yeah, this meeting is about to be over. So thank you again. Thank you everyone for connecting, and I wish you a great rest of the day.
And thank you, Alexandra, and Queensland's section and chapter for hosting me. The honor is all mine.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.